Okay, so today is April 16th, 2019. Speaking with my wife's grandmother, Jollivet Wilson. And Jolly, why don't you tell us your full name and where you were born and when you were born?
Jollivet Irene Painter. I was born in Omaha, Nebraska, June the 24th, 1924.
And do you remember any of your time in Nebraska?
No.
Okay.
I came to Oklahoma when I was 6 weeks old, my folks said.
And what are your parents' full names?
Fred Gale Painter and Myrtle Mae McNaughton. And they were married.
Do you know why you were born in Omaha and then 6 weeks later moved to Harper County, Oklahoma?
Because my dad was working up there, and I don't know where he was working at, but they lived in, and if you want to know where I got my name, well, they lived in an apartment, and my dad said that if they had a girl, there was a girl named Jollivet, and if I was a girl, I was going to get that name, and that's where I got my name. I never knew anybody that had the same name at all, and where I got the nickname Jolly, I don't know. And my dad would not call me anything but Jollivet.
And your birthday is June 24th.
1924.
So in a couple of months, you will be how old?
95.
95. And other than those 6 weeks in Nebraska, you've mainly lived in Harper County.
Yes, except when my husband was in the service, and we wherever he was at.
Right now, you live in Oklahoma City in an apartment, Hefner Mansions, and you've been here, I think, 6 months?
November I came.
Yeah, November of 18. How about your brothers and sisters? Can you give me all of their names? And
Harry Leon Painter, Berldine Painter, and my sister was Ruth Lorraine Painter. And I was second from the youngest.
And
Harry was the oldest, and then Ruth, and then me, and then Dean. And Dean is still living, and the other two are dead.
Okay. And tell us about your first memory of Harper County. Where did you live? And tell us about the area you lived in Harper County.
Well, my folks moved there. Of course, I don't remember all young, but where we lived most of our life was in Harper County, but it was about 2 or 3 miles south of the Kansas line. And my granddad homesteaded there, so it was a homestead, and that's the only place that my folks lived that I can remember.
What was your granddad's name? Was this your father's dad or your mother?
No, my mother's dad.
What was his name?
John McNaughton.
Okay. So when you were in Nebraska, the grandfather was already in Oklahoma homesteading.
As far as I know, I don't know.
I see. So
and they came from eastern Oklahoma, and my dad was born in Iowa, and my mother was, I think it was in Bixby, Oklahoma.
Okay.
And my granddad had a drinking problem that I didn't know nothing about.
John McNaughton.
And they moved away back. Of course, he quit that before my day.
Sure.
And my dad's family came down from Iowa with horses, and he drove one of the horses.
Wow. What about your mother's parents? Do you have memories of them?
My mother's parents, that was John.
Oh, I'm sorry, your father's.
And Sarah, yeah.
John and Sarah McNaughton were your mother's parents. What about your father's parents?
My dad's father was William Painter, and Orinda was my grandmother's name.
And were they from Harper County area as well? Or?
No, they was from Iowa.
So both families happen to be from Iowa.
No, well, just my dad's family, and my mother's family was from Oklahoma.
I see. Um, so you were born in 24,
Right.
and we all know the Dust Bowl days started in the 30s. Can you tell me some of those memories about trying to make it to school? Did you ever have to stay home from school?
Well, I started to grade school when I was 5 years old. My Harry and Ruth were going to school, and we lived a half a mile from the school, and I cried because I wanted to go. So my folks talked to the teacher and asked if I could go to school, and he said yes, but if she can't make it, I'm sending her home. I'm not going to fool with her. And so the folks said, agreed, that's all right. Well, I wasn't about to be sent home. And we had a half a mile to walk to school. And Clarence Robinson was my teacher for first 5 years.
Wow, so you remember the teacher's name.
Yeah.
Do you remember the name of, did the school have a name at that time?
Pioneer.
Pioneer School. And it was a half a mile away from...
Half a mile east.
So the home you lived in, was it John McNaughton's original home?
No.
Or did you guys have one moved in?
My granddad Painter homesteaded on it.
Oh, yeah. So that home that your granddad Painter, that's where you lived after Nebraska.
Yeah. And so now, I don't know whether I lived anywhere else, but my memory is when
Sure.
we moved there.
What about any, when you were old enough to know your neighbors? Who lived around you during those times?
Who lived around us?
Who lived around?
Oh, we had neighbors around there. Neighbors was close back then.
Yeah.
There was some across the creek from us, and there was quite a few people in those days. And there was a Girard Church just across the street. Now, they used to have church in a schoolhouse. I don't remember, but my folks said that I used to stand on the desk and sing. So maybe that's where my great-granddaughter's getting it.
So after your first 5 years with Clarence as your teacher, where did you change schools?
No. We stayed there till we went through the 8th grade, and the teacher had to teach all eight grades. They didn't have but one teacher, and there was only 4 in my class, but I don't remember how many was in the school. But you sat there and you heard everybody's. You heard, so you wasn't no dumbbell when you got out because you heard all that. And then when we got out of grade school, you had to go to the county courthouse and take a test before you was and you had to pass that to be eligible to go to high school.
And was this a one-room school? Pioneer?
One-room school, and you had a fire that you use, a stove.
Sure, like a
Cold.
potbelly stove in the middle.
Cold. And we had to take our lunch, but sometimes in the wintertime, the teacher, they'd put on beans and we'd eat beans.
What is this school building still around that you know of?
Yes, but it's been moved to north of the Willard Cemetery, and my uncle Roy McNaughton bought it, and they moved it over there, and he made a barn out of it. But I think it might have fell down now. I don't know for sure.
Yeah. So after you took your test, did you pass your test?
Oh, yeah.
And what high school did you go to?
I went to Ashland High School there, and my folks paid $5 a month for me to have a ride, and that was hard to get.
Yeah.
$5. And the first year I went to Ashland, Kansas, the high school. And then the second year they were getting buses at Buffalo, but they weren't in yet. So we had to ride in the back of a pickup with the stock racks on it for several weeks till a bus came in.
So your first full year of 9th grade was in Ashland.
That's right.
And then 10th grade is when you moved to Buffalo High School?
Yeah. And I graduated from Buffalo High School in 1941.
1941. How soon after graduation did you go to work immediately? Did you want to try to go to a college? What did you do right after graduation?
Well, they didn't have the money to send me to college. And after high school, I don't remember how long, I worked at a hatchery in Buffalo, and I stayed with my uncle that was down there. I made $3 a week for 6 days, 50 cents a day.
$3 a week. How long? When did you meet Jack, your first husband, Jack Cotter? Tell me about him.
Oh, well, later on when I was older, I met him and I was working. And I worked in not the courthouse, but a farm deal there. And that's where this lady here that we worked at the same time. And that's where I met him. He worked at a service station.
Around what year was that, would you think?
Well, we were married in 44.
So it wasn't long after high school. You graduated 41,
yeah,
and you married 44.
I was 20 years old when I got married.
Okay. Was Jack already enlisted in the military?
I don't
when
remember.
You got married?
I don't remember, but it was back when he went the first year. It was compulsory. The government made you go and spend a year if you was 18 years old.
Yeah.
So you don't have a choice. And then he was in the 45th and at Alva. And then he just got home not too awful long, and he was had to go to the other. And
let's go back a little bit to before high school, and I know you have some memories about a certain Sunday and a certain dust storm. Can you tell us about that?
yeah. Oh, well, you're talking about Black Sunday.
Black Sunday, that's right.
Yeah, I'll never will forget that. That was awful. You didn't know whether there was the Lord coming back or what was happening. And the chickens went to roost, and my dad was out at the barn. He had to use the fence to come back to get to the house. It was awful.
Around what time was the morning okay?
It was on Sunday. I don't remember exactly the time it was.
Did you normally go to church on Sunday?
Oh, we always went to church.
So had you gone to church?
I can't remember
Okay.
for sure. When we grew up, we was very, very poor. And we had one pair of shoes. And I will say this, my folks taught me of the Lord and to trust Him. And we lived just across the road from the church. But Saturday evening, we always polished our shoes and ready for church. Didn't have very much. And we could walk across. And I have good memories. My dad never did holler at us to get ready for church, but he played the harmonica. And when he got ready, he sat down and he'd play that harmonica until we all got ready for church. And then we just had to walk across the road.
And what church did you attend?
Assembly of God. It was Assembly of God.
And this is in the town of Buffalo?
No, it was in the country.
Oh, you were across from it in the
Yeah,
country. I see.
we was
Now.
across.
Is that church still standing?
No, it moved to Buffalo.
I see.
A lot of years after that. And back then, well, it was awful dry. We had no electricity, no water in the house, outdoor toilet. We always said we had three rooms and a deal there. And we didn't have very much money. And I can remember when it was so dry that we'd take our cattle and put them on the road because there'd be a little, and we'd have to, I was one of them that had to watch them.
Now, why did you put them on the road?
Because there'd be a little moisture, would make a little grass along the side.
Oh, I see. Can you tell us about since you're second to youngest, your older siblings, what did they end up doing after leaving?
Well, Harry was a farmer, and he helped back in our day. Dad had horses, and he helped like that, and I even drove the horses, and we milked a lot of cows by hand, 25 most of the time, morning and night, and had eggs. That's the way they never went to town more than once a week. and they'd buy enough gas that they had enough to get back and go back to Buffalo. Then we never got to go to town very often.
So did Harry stay in Harper County?
Yeah, and his son, he just had one son. That's Don Painter, that lives in Woodward, and yeah, he went to work at Boeing. Well, Dean and him both did for a while, and he come home first. He said he'd rather eat with the chickens than stay in that big town.
What about?
He was a hard worker.
And he was the oldest, Harry.
Harry.
Who was after Harry?
Ruth, and she had polio,
Oh,
and she was crippled, so she didn't do any outside work. She wasn't able to. She was in braces for a long time. But she ended up, well, she divorced, but she moved to Oklahoma City and got her a job and retired down here.
what'd she retire from?
DHS.
Oh, okay. So what did you do? So you graduated in 41. You married Jack in 44.
Then,
How soon? Where did you start working after the hatchery?
well, I worked some for the county at the courthouse, but after we was married, no, I didn't. And we were married in Arizona.
Why Arizona? Were you just
Yeah.
traveling through?
No, because he was in the service.
Oh,
And I had an uncle and aunt out there, and so we were married out there. And we was married late at night. There was a line up to get married. And you had to wait in line. And some of Stonehouse was his buddy, and him and his wife stood up with us. And we sent a telegram back, and I think it's probably in some of the stuff that I sent back. I was married.
so his friend Stonehouse and
They were in service too.
they were in service together. They were getting married, same place.
No, they weren't getting married. They was already married.
Oh, they were your witnesses.
Yeah.
I see. And when were you married to Jack?
In 1944.
What day? Do you remember?
I see. March the 18th.
March the 18th. And how soon after you got married? So in March of 44, how soon did he have to leave and go overseas?
Well, I can't remember the date. It wasn't too awful long. We came back, after we was married, we came back, and we was at my folks for a little bit, and then we went to the East Coast. That's where he was going to be shipped from. And he was shipped out of Trenton, New Jersey is where he was shipped. But we were there for a while before he got shipped out, because I worked at a thermoid where they made belts for cars and stuff.
Yeah.
I worked there.
So you went with him to New Jersey,
We was already married.
and he gets shipped off.
He was embarked from there.
How did you stay long on the East Coast, or did you
No.
come right back?
No, my folks come out there and rode back with us, with me.
Yeah,
And I stayed mostly at Buffalo.
that's a long drive, Harper County to Trenton, New Jersey.
And they couldn't tell you where they left from. And
Oh, Jack wasn't allowed to tell you.
no, but he wrote a letter and said that they'd been wondering who wrote Trees. Joyce Kilmer.
Yeah,
Right off I got what it was, and I knew they left from Camp Kilmer.
Camp Kilmer. So he sent you a coded letter.
Yeah, the letter, see, and I've got letters. They had what they call V-mail, and they was little tiny. And if you put in there anything that they didn't like, they marked it out.
So when you came back to stay with your parents, and you were still in
Oklahoma.
in Harper County, in the north part of Harper County.
Where was that?
Yeah.
Where my folks was at. They was still out there in the country.
Do you have any memories of the town of Brule before it turned into
Not really.
Buffalo? How often did you said you went into town?
Oh, they did about once a week. They'd go to Ashland sometimes, It was just about a mile or two closer to Ashland.
And was your father a farmer as well? And he dealt in horses?
Yeah, well, that's all you had then.
Yeah.
And we had a horse to ride. Oh, I love to ride. But our mother wouldn't let us ride with a saddle. She was afraid we'd get our foot hooked in them and drag us to death.
So you were riding horses bareback?
Oh, yeah, I always rode them bareback. And it's easy to get on them.
Yeah.
You just put your foot up there where their knee is. And you just,
Up you go?
Oh, you're on there. And one time I had to go get cows sometimes 2 miles away where my dad had rented. And one time something moved in a bunch of thistles and I went over the head in that thistle patch. It was no use whining. Wasn't nobody there to sympathize. You just got back on and went on.
So something startled the horse and he bucked?
Yeah. Yeah. And, but, oh, I love to ride a horse. We called him Brownie. And my dad would ride him. Of course, he was a lot heavier. And he'd come in leading him because he'd be limping so bad. He'd tie him to the fence. I could run out there and jump on him. He never limped a bit.
Did all of your brothers and sisters enjoy riding horses too?
Not my sister.
Oh, well, sure.
She
Yeah.
had polio.
Yeah.
Yeah. Same horse.
Brownie.
And then my youngest brother, Dean, he was racing with the neighbor's kids. And I come in crying and told my dad to come. My dad knew what happened. Horse had a heart attack and died.
So Dean was riding Brownie in a race.
Yeah, with the neighbors.
And during the race, Brownie
died
from a heart attack.
They come in crying, so my dad just got on the tractor because he knew.
Yeah.
They told him now he's old, and we could take that. Of course, we didn't have toys like they.
Sure.
We didn't have any toys, and we could get all of us that could get on there to ride, and then we'd tie a wagon to his tail, and somebody'd get in that wagon, and he never kicked or nothing. And if you fell off, he never stepped on you. He just said, stay right there and never move his foot.
Was Brownie buried on your property?
I don't remember, but I think so.
So if you had to guess, about how old were you when that happened, when Brownie passed away, you think?
I don't know. I wasn't married.
So it could have been when you were a young teenager even?
Yeah.
So.
And when there would be across the road, there was kind of a mud hole, we called it. We used to play in that mud hole. We didn't have toys. If you had some spools, why, you'd fasten them together and you'd build you a fence and use rocks. And at Christmas time, we didn't have a Christmas tree. We just get a limb and we cut out of cardboard stars and stuff like that. And if anybody had been at our house and smoked and thrown their cigarette package back, there's some aluminum foil in it.
That's right.
And we'd get that aluminum foil out and save it, and then we could make them brighter. And we string popcorn and China berries, if you know what they are, they're orange. And we string that and put on our tree. And we always had a star for the top. It was pretty neat.
What during those, especially the 30s, what kind of meals do you remember having?
Oh, we never went hungry. We never went hungry.
So you always had eggs and milk?
See, we had cows, and my dad would butcher. Well, people would get together and butcher meat, and he raised hogs, and we had what we called a wash house, and the water would come from the well, and it would go through this. Well, it was made out of metal. It would go through that and then go into the tank. And if anything we was trying to save temporarily, we'd put in that water.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, that the wind didn't blow it. And we always had milk, and we churned our own butter, and we had meat. They'd hang that meat, wrap it in a sheet, and put it. It was a lot colder than it is now. these years, and pull it clear up to the top. And then the pork, we had a stuff that they wrapped it, and they put on it, and then wrapped it in it and brown paper, and that would have a cure. Now some people had a house that they had a building, but we didn't have anything like that.
So you hung meat in the home?
Yeah, we always had, and they raised chickens, and I never went hungry. We didn't have variety, and you didn't say my mother didn't say, what do you want for lunch? If you didn't like it, it's just tough.
I've seen video from the 30s with all these jackrabbits. Do you remember those jackrabbits?
Oh, sure. And ground them up and made rabbit burgers.
So they were plentiful. They were all over the place?
Yeah. And sure. But everything was made from scratch. My mother, for breakfast, might have biscuits, you might have pancakes, and biscuits and gravy, and we had meat. And then she made sauerkraut, and you had to store it down the cellar. And she made hominy out of corn and canned all that. And my personal opinion is it's all that spray's making us sick now.
The pesticides that you didn't have back in the 30s, yeah.
No. And then she raised a garden. I can remember picking up the potatoes and all that. And when they butchered the pork, well, people would get together, and they had this big metal thing that they'd put all the cracklings in, and that's where you'd render the lard out. And they had a barrel. They'd heat the water, stick them in and out.
So in 44, when you came back and Jack went overseas, how long was Jack overseas? And do you know where he was overseas?
About 13 months he was in Germany.
Okay.
And just before he got to come home, he could have went to see the Eiffel Tower. But if he was gone when they called his number, he'd have to wait for the next time, and he wouldn't wait.
He wasn't going to wait.
He stayed right there. He said he'd rather come home and see the Eiffel Tower. And when he called me that he was back in the States, he couldn't get me, and we had a rural central office, and it was on Sunday night, and I don't remember the time or day. Anyhow, the operator said, "She's at church." She said, "You call pretty soon." And I remember he said some of the other guys said they wish they knew where their wife was at.
Yeah.
And he called me back, and we went to my folks went with me. We went to Fort Smith, Arkansas, and picked him up, and he told us he'd be at a bus station. Well, we didn't any of us know anything about the bus station. We stopped at the wrong one, but he could see us. And after he greeted us, the first thing he said was, please don't ask me about the war."
So he luckily you didn't have to go to New Jersey again. He got shipped back to Fort Smith, Arkansas.
Yeah, but he came in on the East Coast. He said when he saw the Statue of Liberty, it was the most wonderful thing he'd ever seen.
And the 13 months he was over there, he really didn't want to talk with anybody about it, is what you're saying.
He didn't say very little.
And he was still with the 45th during?
No, he was 80th Division.
80th.
When he went back in, he was with the 80th. No, he was in the 45th just when they drafted him.
I see.
Made him go.
What was do you remember his ending rank?
I don't remember. I think it was sergeant. It's on the cemetery.
Okay. So he gets back in 13 months later. Where did you lived with your parents temporarily? When did you and him move away from your parents?
Well, right away. I don't remember exactly. But I'd lived up there 73 years when I moved out here.
Yeah, 73 years. So
the first house we moved in. It was that little house we call the White House.
The house that's next door to your house in Buffalo.
Yeah, that was the White House.
So you went from only knowing the homestead home and living there. Then when he comes back, the first house you lived in is the house that's next door to your home now.
And you know, it's just 3 rooms.
Yes, I remember.
And even after Gary was born, I think he was about 12 when we moved home. And the bad part he hated was because he thought we was leaving those trees. We had trees then. And of course we sold it and then we bought it back.
Is the house in its original location? Is that where?
No, it was moved in from out toward Pleasant Valley. You know where that cemetery is?
I think so.
Okay, it was out in that area. And the buses moved it in.
So that's when you first moved to Buffalo.
Right.
And so this would have been 45, 46?
Yeah, the war was over in 45, and right away we put a place down there.
Okay. So you're now in Buffalo. This is 45 or 46. Did you stay home and he went to work, or were you both working?
We both worked. I worked at the grocery store, and he carpentered. And then he was farming when he went into overseas. You're supposed to get your stuff back, but you don't. They lie to you, and he didn't. And you're supposed to get the land back and everything. And then I worked. Then after Gary was born, I didn't want to work when he went to school, first started school, I worked at a flower factory. They had artificial flowers and stuff, and they made them for memorial. And if you see them in those boxes in the stores, the flowers came from a place like that. And when he'd get out of school, by the time he'd walk where I was at, I was off work.
I want to go back. I forgot. I wanted to ask you, how did you and Jack meet?
Well, just there in Buffalo. He was working, and I don't know, probably when I was getting gas or something, I don't know.
So you think maybe even at the service station where you met him?
Yeah, because it was just a little town.
Yeah. So you probably knew of his family, and he knew of your family.
Not really.
Oh, really? Okay.
No.
Are any of these buildings, the grocery store you worked in, the service station, are any of these still in Buffalo?
Yeah, you know where the paper is from Buffalo?
Yeah.
The paper, well, that was where the station was. And he was in it with his nephew, and there's 3 of them in it together. They had wholesale and retail. And they was there for a long time. And then everybody ought to have to work for the public. I remember they had the retail and wholesale both. They had a truck. And it was okay.
How long did he stay at the service station?
I don't remember how many years, but quite a while. And one of them, not his nephew, but the other one, he turned out to be a preacher. And he's dead. Well, him and his wife both dead now. But their daughter graduated out of high school with Gary. And they come down here to see me.
Well, that's nice.
Just that once, I guess they wanted to see if I was okay.
And so tell me your son's full name and his date of birth.
Gary Cotter. He's born